Badeu is good. Like, really, really good. But not at Osu, because he's clearly playing a different game than everyone else. We begin our story in 2013, when Badeu first installed the game, at the age of 8. This would really just be his introduction though, since after about a month of seriously playing, he started declining in playtime, until he basically quit. But every few months, he would come back and play at least a bit. This cycle would continue throughout the rest of 2014, until finally, in June of 2015, he came back, for good this time, playing a fair bit until, by 2016, with nearly 20,000 play count, he got his first 100 PP play. Yeah, this is fairly slow improvement, even for just normal players, and especially for someone who would eventually get the PP record. But then again, he was 10 at the time, so I guess that explains most of it. But him playing throughout the rest of the year would still yield few results, with his top play only being 150 PP. But luckily, throughout 2017, he would finally begin to find his groove. Because in 1 year, he'd get not only his first 200, not only his first 300, or 400, but up to a 500 PP play. Yeah, he went from extremely average to one of the fastest improving players ever, in a single year. It's honestly baffling, but I think him playing more, combined with him getting older, sort of like Vaxe, causing him to have a year where he just dominated. And by this time, he already had one big thing going for him. And that was his aim, which was both incredible and consistent, which made his top plays a mix of longer Nomad maps and shorter DT ones. But that was really all he had going for him, and he could basically be considered an aim one trick. Although I think you can mostly chalk this up to his aim improving so quickly that his streaming ability just couldn't keep up. So going into 2018, he had been improving quickly, and his aim was well ahead of the rest of his play. And I would say this is often where a player would hit a wall, or at least have a month or two where they weren't able to get an insane play while the rest of their playstyle caught up. But not Badeu, since in January he choked Anime Band for his new top play, and in February he was able to FC a lower diff for almost his top play again, and then in March it was more of the same with a Miwaka Ame FC worth 500 PP. And then, in April, he got his first 600 on the drum and bass Best Friends. And this cycle of insanity would only seem to continue, with many high 500s throughout the next 2 months. But they were all just a lead up to one play, when he did this on Monochrome Butterfly. After this, he would continue to get a lot of high PP plays and the like, and even his first still standing leaderboard spot, which were all big progressions for sure. But August would be the month where he began to set plays that were legitimately super unique and sort of just absurd. Like the number 1 DT score on the Unforgiving, and then the second DTFC on Crazy Motorcycle after 10 years. With these plays, Badeu would show off what would become his claim to fame. How his reading and aim combined to make an absolutely insane combo that made him incredibly unique. And not only this, but he's also amazing at aiming uncomfortable or even stupid patterns, which means he can pretty much aim any map in the game, whether it's slider spam or cross-map jumps. And he finally had a chance to show off all these skills in the biggest tournament in the world, when the Osu World Cup came around. And when in November he participated in his first ever OWC, his team did this.
Poland are behind! Poland have to catch up! Their tournament lives are on the line!
They have to do it, but can they is the question right now.
The defending world champions are on the ropes! Romania have them right where they want them!
An alien with the brain is gonna solidify
and
it!
Poland are going out in groups! Romania!
Romania
misses!
Wait a second, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not over!
I think it is. I think it is. I think that's
It is
still
over!
100
Romania!
They defeated Poland, who were the previous year's champions. And on top of this month, he would get his first 700 PP play, which meant that in just 2 years, he'd gone from 100 PP to 700 PP, and an insane OWC performance. And then even with all of this, in the same month, he would pass Roholk to become the number 1 player in Romania. And then he ended the year with a bang, when he got a 1 slider break on Sans Undertale Tag 4, which made history as the first ever impossible map to be S-ranked. This year represented a pretty insane and nearly unprecedented rise to the top. But despite how well he played in 2018, 2019 would be the year that he'd become the god that he is today. He started off the year with an Insight Hard Rock FC, once again showing off his inhuman aim. And in January he also just farmed a ton, getting a Snow Halation and Blade Dance plays, which were worth 6 and 700 PP, among a bunch of other high PP plays. And then, for once, he actually slowed down a bit in February. But when he came back with a bang. An Astro Sexy 4 miss, and 2 new top plays in a month. And yeah, one of them is 10 seconds long, but his score was and still is the number 1 on the map, because no one else has the raw aim to do it besides him. His aim can legitimately do anything, from Astro Sexy to an AR-11 farm map. And then one of the most insane aim scores up to that point in the form of a Full Moon Night A-rank pass. This is crazy for a few reasons. First is obviously the aim, because it's really hard. But since a few players already had 9-star FCs, and Badeu was actually the player with the most of this time, why was this 54 miss so groundbreaking? Well, it's all about object density. Since while AR 9.4 and 274 BPM are not all that hard for most top players individually, when you put them together, it's essentially the equivalent of reading AR 8. And this is AR 8 with note lock, basically meaning that a single misread would cause death. And this was why Badeu was so crazy. It seemed like no amount of weird AR or stupid aim could stop him. And this insane skill and improvement would all crescendo in one moment that year. A masterpiece DT FC. To say this is one of the greatest DT scores ever is putting it lightly. AR 8 squares at 270 BPM. Basically one of the hardest things to read and aim in the game. But there was one thing that brought the score down just a bit. The bursts. Because, well, Badeu just sort of mashed. Which brings us to his one and only weakness. Streaming. Badeu is not a speed player, or even a stream player. Which is why nearly every one of these plays is on a map with little to no streams. But I think it's not as bad as he and other people make it out to be. The clearest evidence of this is OWC, where he can basically play everything, but is still very clearly weaker on the stream maps. So yeah, he isn't great at streams, but as long as they aren't high BPM, he's not that bad. But still, with Masterpiece DT, he cemented 2019 as the year where everything came together for him. And I feel there's one clip at the end of the year that shows everything. I have so many questions. How do you read that? How do you aim that? Why is every circle a 1, and how could he even tell? But I guess that's just Badeu for you. Finally though, this all leads to 2020. And the only way I can describe this year is that if Masterpiece DT was the crescendo of 2019, then literally the entirety of 2020 was one. He began the year with one of the best scores he'd ever set, with a Pink Guy Pink Season FC. To put in perspective how crazy this score was, there were only 3 A ranks when he FC'd. After this, he would take a bit of a break, before getting his first play on C-Type. Let's just say we may or may not be back to this map. But more relevant to the time, right after this, he got nearly 900 PP on Black Rover, followed by 2 other 800s. He hadn't farmed that much in 2019 because he really didn't see much of a reason to. But in 2020, he had the goal of reaching the top 10. And these scores really just showed off how easily he could do so. But all of this was nothing in comparison to Badeu, Turbo, Padoru, Gift, plus Hidden Hard Rock Double Time, map set by Sotarks, 9.39 stars, 98.19% accuracy, FC number 1, 989 PP, 73 UR. He had done what no other man was willing to do, and he'd played Padoru, getting the best act by 4%, and missing 1000 PP by 1/100. This is a score, for sure. But I do find it funny this is worth double Masterpiece, despite this play being at least 4 times better in actuality. He then followed this by doing Badeu things, when he 9 missed a 9.5 star tag 4 map, which has a 25 miss as the next best score. And then, he S-ranked Lonely Go, as well as an easy DT SS on C-Type. And with this, he was able to reach 1 digit, becoming the first Romanian since Rollhulk to do so, which would finally signal the end of his farming stage. with a statement after saying, "This is such a huge weight off my chest. All I wanted was 1 digit. Now I can actually just enjoy the game." This would give him the time to set a lot of scores that are just plain inhuman. A countdown 3-2-1 pass with only 17 misses, which was the first pass on the leaderboards. And then he set a score. And I mean a score. When he 15 missed the same diff Full Moon Night that he'd 54 missed just a year earlier. Badeu is still improving at an inhuman rate. And this was only followed by more insanity, with a Full Moon Night top diff 8 miss. This map is 10 stars, meaning that Badeu now not only had the lowest miscount on the map, but also one of the lowest miscounts on a 10 star in the game. He then followed this with an Insight SS, and then in the complete opposite direction, he got a main Thema DTFC. The map is CS8, and pretty uncomfortable, which made it basically impossible to anyone who wasn't used to extreme CSs. But with this score, he even sniped Fancy Lad, who's probably the best precision player in the entire game right now. And then to top it all off, a Flamingo Easy DTFC. The object density of Easy on a 320 BPM map is just baffling. Now this video has basically just become me gawking at every single play that Badeu does, but I just can't stop. They're just all completely absurd in entirely different ways, which makes it so fascinating to look at. But this finally all leads to his final phase, where he is now, where he set the first technical 10-star FC, and then technically an 11-star one. He's also 5 missed Revolutionary at 2, which is such an unfathomable score that I find it difficult to describe. But the best way I could think of was to say that Kakizi failed and Whitecat got a 13 miss, and both were considered God mode scores. He also got a 997 PP play on Lonely Go, which is a 2 miss with 3 mod on a map that no one had FC'd at that point. But around this time, he got one play which should have been seen as the beginning of the end. A C-type DT Hard Rock, worth over 900 PP. This map is a bit special, since it's CS8, and so to achieve the same difficulty, it doesn't need quite the same size of jumps. But obviously it balances out, so it doesn't matter, right? Well, let's skip to November, where we are now, when he set his first 1k, his first 1.1k, and then the PP record and the second ever 1200 PP play on the map. So, why? Well, there are a few things. First is that Badeu's aim and reading are so good that even CS8 AR11 jumps are doable with good accuracy for him. But that was only what got him 1k. How did he get the PP record? Well, it's Flashlight. It was the mod used to get the previous PP record, because with enough memorization, it can give a huge amount of PP. But this time, it's overweighted for a bit of a different reason, since this map is the perfect storm. Its small CS causes it to have extremely small jumps for its star rating, making it much easier to read with Flashlight. And it's so short that the Flashlight barely shrinks in size, which is usually one of the biggest problems. But the biggest thing is that this map lacks the worst part of Flashlight. It has no sliders. This is why this play, while being obviously insane, is stupidly overrated. And a thing that's funny to me is just how many better scores Badeu has in this. But obviously, since this one has a high number, it's gonna get the most attention. It's still crazy obviously, but it baffles me why it gets more attention than a Flamingo Easy DTFC or a Masterpiece DTFC. Still though, it's cool to see an insane player getting more attention. And with how quickly he's improving, and his newfound method of farming, it's not a stretch to say that him getting number 1 is almost certainly doable. And I think that's pretty exciting.